Hi, Rene. Welcome to Voynich Talk, and thank you for being in this video.
Thanks, Koen. It's my pleasure.
So, as I told you today, we'll be talking mostly about Currier languages and specifically in Quire 8. But first, before we start that, maybe for people who are new to all of this, when we say Currier languages, what do we actually mean?
Yes, so Currier gave a talk in, I think, the 1970s, where he explained his findings that different pages in the manuscript tend to be written either in one or another language, as he called it. But he said, okay, they may not be languages, but there are simply different types of combinations of words and characters that stand out. So it's like two different languages or dialects. And he called them A and B. And he made a list of criteria how you could decide whether a particular page is A or B language. But it turned out that there is actually a very simple criterion that does the same trick, namely to look for bigrams, so a pair of characters where the first one looks like a C, which is an EVA is the E, and the second one looks like a figure 8 or the EVA D. So if you search for the bigram ED, you will find pages that have a lot of them, and these are Currier B language, and you'll find that pages that have nothing or almost nothing, and these are then Currier A.
I don't have to add a Y here?
No, it's just ED is sufficient.
Okay. So here, for example, we see in the herbal section, which is the section we'll mostly be looking at, that you could basically pick out the B folios just by looking where the yellow C8 pairs show up. For example, here, this would be... Currier did also point out a few other things, but they're probably less clear, or...
So he did, yes. He actually did not point out this criterion. This is something that was found later by later researchers. Yeah,
because I looked on your website, and because I didn't actually know what exactly Currier said. And here it says final 8-9, so DY in EVA. But actually the what we show here is clearer.
Yes, yeah. It's so a single criterion that creates the same split.
Yeah. So we could also see, for example, that Quire 13 would be entirely B language.
Exactly.
And to an extreme extent, apparently.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Also Quire 20.
Indeed, yeah, that is correct. You see there is some variation, more variation here. You see pages that are completely full, and there are pages that are a bit more sparse, which is quite interesting in a way, but this is not really what we will be talking about today.
No. Now, moving on to Quire 8. So this, I took this from your website, Rene. It shows first that 3 bifolia are missing. How do we know that they're missing?
Well, these numbers are actually taken from the folio numbers that are written on the manuscript.
Yeah.
Probably not by the original scribes or authors, but by a later owner. And they match the order as the pages are now in the manuscript. So it really runs incrementally from 1 to 116 with a few gaps. And this is the first gap. If you start from the beginning, then you have, 7 quires that all consist of 4 bifolios. Now this is quire number 8. And here you just have 57, 58, 65, 66. So you know that there are, say, 6 folios or 3 bifolios are missing. So that means somebody else knew in the past that these were missing, or maybe they existed and were lost at a later point. This is probably more likely. And the funny thing is, until this point, all quires have 4 bifolios. So if there was just an indication that something was missing, the person would have guessed that only 2 would have been missing, obviously.
Right.
But there are 3 missing. So this is the first point in the manuscript where we have a non-standard quire of 5, which is the same as the biological quire, by the way. It also has 5.
Is it theoretically possible that these pages that are missing are actually now in other parts of the manuscripts and that we still have them, but they're just in a different place?
I think it's unlikely because they would have been numbered. And now, okay, the funny thing is, again, that if you look at 67, which we don't have to do today. But if you were to do that, you can see that there used to be another folio number there first. This has been erased. And this could have been 62, but it's hard to see. So possibly.
Okay.
It really creates a different complicated story what would have happened to cause this. Yeah, because then it was 62 before, but then it was changed, say after it was lost somehow. It's really difficult to explain how that could have happened.
Yeah, and as we will see today, it's already complicated enough as it is.
Yeah.
So we have 2 bifolio left, basically. That's 8 pages. And they are of mixed content, mixed appearance, which is also unusual, right? And in this manuscript, at least.
It is unusual. So it is not unusual to have a section, a whole long section of one particular type of illustrations where one page is text only, like it's an introductory page. So the very first page in the manuscript has that role for the herbal, and in the biological, there's one such page. I think these are the main examples. But here, even the 3 text-only pages are not just text-only. I mean, the one you're seeing here in the middle has lists of words and characters in the margin, and the 2 other ones have stars in the margin. Yeah, look like the last Quire, but they're still different. Now, the interesting thing is very unusual. It's almost unique. And the other interesting part is that so each bifolio has 2 herbal drawings and 2 other things. But on the outer bifolio, so 57 plus 66, the 2 plants are next to each other on the outside. And on the inner bifolio, the 2 plants are on the 2 sides of one folio. It's all very unusual. Now, it would maybe be possible to refold them such that all the plants are together and all the other ones are together. I'm not sure. I've never tried it. It's worth trying maybe. But then certainly the Quire number would end up in the wrong place.
This was all known so far. Now, as in the video that we recorded already with Lisa, Michelle, David, and Lars, we focused on the plant images in those bifolia. So if we add our plant property data to all of this, then on almost each of these pages in Quire 8 and in Quire 8 alone, so it's really quite exceptional, there is a mix of things that belong more with Currier A or Herbal A and things that belong more with Currier B. There's none of these pages are absolutely consistent in the way that the other pages are. And part of that already has to do with text and scribes. So we start, for example, with 57R, and there you told me that these 2 paragraphs are different somehow.
Indeed, and this is also quite unique in the manuscript. I haven't found any other example that's anywhere near like this. So overall, this should be called Currier B, and you can do the check in a moment where you check if the combination ED, or C8, depending on how you want to call it, is very present. But this is only in the first paragraph.
Here.
That's the one. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, it's only in the second paragraph. Okay.
Yes. Right. So they start out in, what this is then, this first paragraph. It's not really A.
It's a bit more like A language, but well, I've been looking into different types of languages recently, which may be something to deal with at a later stage because it's still very new and not well known. But it's more like A language because it really has no case of this bigram. But if you instead now look for the trigram EOD, you see something happening.
Oh yeah.
So these are all over the first paragraph, which is indicative of possibly the pharmaceutical language or the zodiac language. But so you see the 2 paragraphs are really quite different. But overall, it qualifies as B language, undoubtedly. So this is unusual. This is really not happening anywhere else. So this is another, say, mystery of this Quire.
And so another weirder thing about this is that both of these are by the same scribe. We're going by Lisa's scribes here, of course. And this scribe is rare in the herbal section, scribe 5. And now this plant has very, very strong A properties. So with A properties, we mean properties found usually only in herbal A, so with Currier A language, which is for us really interesting, of course, because we never find any conflict of language and plant that is this strong. So an A plant this strong with supposed B language, as on this folio. And this folio happens to be a rare scribe and inconsistent in its language use. So yeah, there's a lot going on here. We don't know why, but I'm sure it's important in some way, which we might find out later. But so
Yes,
this is
A
A or B. A?
is the stem root line, and the stems attaching in the center of the leaf.
So this is
Yes.
57R.
Yeah,
That looks pretty A-ish.
very, very A-ish.
Yes. Yeah, interesting.
I've been assigning scores to each plant to how A and how B it was, and this one might be even the winner for A.
Yeah, it's kind of like that plant that we said is all B. This is maybe the A equivalent that has a cluster of A.
So there won't be many plants that have more A properties than this one. We have
That's really interesting.
a double stem root line, which is like kind of a super stem root line, which some of them have.
Yeah.
We have the stalk connecting to the center. We have A calyxes. We have
Yeah.
flowers. It doesn't have a typical A structure, but that's okay. I mean,
It also doesn't have veins, but
yeah, it's kind of hard to see.
But it certainly doesn't have the features that you would identify immediately as bee plants. That's really
no,
interesting.
certainly not.
Part of the problem too is that scribe 5 is so rare that statistically there's just a minuscule amount of data to work with in terms of determining A or B. So that's tricky, you know?
Yeah. But so for us, it's the same as if you look at scribe 1 and say, well, this is scribe 1. For us, if we look at this.
Oh yeah, no, I
that's an
agree
A
that
plant.
this absolutely is an A plant. That's really interesting.
Yeah, so those two things could maybe a different artist collaborated with this scribe, or we don't know.
It's also,
Well, okay, hang on though. If the implication here is that if the association between scribe and plant is consistent everywhere else, the implication is that the scribes are the artists. In which case, it wouldn't be surprising if this by scribe 5 was a different artist and with different features than you expect to find in other B pages, because the other B pages are, except for this, are scribe 2. So if scribe 2 is also drawing their own plants, then you would expect that consistency. Whereas here, if we're looking at a different scribe, the implication might be that the scribes and the artists are in fact the same person, which is extremely cool.
which scribe are we looking at here?
This is 5.
5. So we're actually seeing that scribe 5 works with scribe 1's plants.
Right, exactly. My point then is that perhaps this is in fact a different artist, that scribe 5 is also the artist of these pages.
I hadn't thought about it yet that this is actually like a rare scribe who did this.
Very rare.
Who apparently then maybe didn't make his own drawings. Maybe had someone else's drawings to work with.
I mean, if we had some of those intervening bifolia, maybe that would be more scribe 5, but there's just so little of scribe 5 to work with that it's hard to draw those
it's interesting though that scribe 5 writes in scribe 2's dialect, language. But apparently uses scribe 1's drawings.
But my point is that the implication is that this is a different artist. This isn't a scribe 1 plant. It's a different artist using similar features. That's what I would argue. is that if this stands out as an exception, the simplest explanation is that Scribe 5 drew these plants.
It looks like having the stem continue to the center of the leaf is not something one would pick up on when trying to copy an artist's style. It's more something someone does. So I'm really inclined to consider this works by the same artist who does this throughout the manuscript, but it doesn't have to mean that it's either Scribe 1 or Scribe 5.
Historically, this Quire, and it's really sad that we have only two sheets of it, has been considered like a transition kind of folio. I mean, it is the end of the early herbal part. After this, we get the cosmological part and the astronomical part. And so its location in the manuscript is already a bit of a transition point, and since it has this mixture of different things, it also, in that sense, it could be some kind of a transition point.
Yes, but herbal B is currently located before this folio in the manuscript, so it can, or could it originally have been a transition between herbal A and herbal B in the original folio order?
This is again totally unclear to me why the herbal part is in two really different languages, how they got mixed up. Maybe it's just a matter of having different people doing it. It may be in parallel, and it was meant to be like this, but they just use a different way of generating the text. So we don't know if there should have been a herbal A part and a herbal B part, or if it was really, they are in the right order now. But again, so now your new observation that the drawings can be identified again suggests that they could be different parts, but we can't be really sure because it could just be the effect of a personal property of creating the pages.
Yeah. Now, one thing that's for certain, and that becomes even more clear with our new observations on these plant properties, is that in Quire 8, so these pages that we're discussing now, we see more different people, different styles, different languages within the same Quire, within the same page. So there's something special about these two bifolia that must have been important in the transition between scribes, where maybe the first person working on the manuscript gave responsibilities to other people for the first time or something like that. We don't really know, but so that's why I think this is important to think about. But yeah, to find an actual answer is more difficult.
Yes, but you can see here also on both, well, you can't see it entirely, but certainly on the inner bifolio, which is the 58 plus 65 here, you have the two different languages in a single bifolio. That is, again, entirely unusual.
Right, I marked it here with this. So here...
And on 57V, sorry to interrupt you, there's it's mostly single characters, but there are words. And if just by looking at the existing words, this is much more like a language. So in that sense, you also have both different languages on one bifolio. So the idea that these two bifolios are together is already in a way consistent because they're both a mixture. So it's obvious, I mean, and the hands being different, it's obvious that these were created by different people.
They're consistent in their inconsistency, you might say.
Yes.
So this one has been, Lisa says, Scribe 1, who is the scribe of herbal A. And the weird thing about that, I made a diagram here. I made it blue for for B, because all or most or all other circular diagrams are by Scribe 4, who writes in the B language. And here we get a circular diagram in the mostly A language, you say, by Scribe 1.
Well, the most circular diagrams are in between A and B, which is what I now call C language. But okay, that's a thing for a later
We'll
time.
do a video about that later.
I think that would be worth doing. Yes. But it's in between. So this is more like A, and certainly the earlier zodiac diagrams. So in the beginning of the zodiac section are more A-like, but they are in between A and B.
So then we move on to...
Yeah. Okay. These its recto and verso are very similar, and even though the stars in the margin look a lot like the ones in the last Quire 20 of the manuscript. The language there is B, and here it's A. But there are some parallels. There are some other properties that are the same, but we don't need to go into that now. But these are text-only pages, which are part of the inner bifolio.
What is the most bizarre? Well, most bizarre. What is also bizarre here is that Lisa identifies scribe 3 here, who is usually a B scribe, who is now apparently writing an A.
Indeed.
And start text is also usually in the B language. So both the type of layout, the type of text we're seeing, and the hand suggest that we would expect the B language, but we're getting A language.
Yes, that is correct. And in fact, the scribe of Quire 20, if I remember correctly, is 3.
So that means that it's the same scribe here doing the same kind of layout, but in a different language.
Yes, and stars in the margin, also consistent.
So they're all kind of doing different things here than they usually do. It's so bizarre. So it's the same for the first show, only we get only 1 star here, but it's very similar.
Yeah, there's one statistic that is quite different between the recto and the verso, namely the percentage of words that are starting with the EVA Q, the little 4. But it is totally unclear to me what that means.
So here we can see it, right?
Yeah.
So you get a lot more words starting with the Q on. It's almost covered, this page, and here it's much more spaced out. Yeah, okay.
But whatever it means.
Yeah, we're just pointing out weird stuff today. We don't know what it means. Okay, on to the next plants.
What do we see on the other bifolio, but on the other herbal leaves?
Yeah,
so Quire 8.
So this one,
walk through that.
If we
Right, so that's the one where there's so little text that you can't even judge.
And so on this one, we get a completely different picture.
Well, this is hard because there's really nothing.
There is nothing here.
There's nothing that can identify this plant as either A or B.
No, well,
and also the text doesn't really help us either.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's true that if there's a flat top root and no stem root lines, it's B, then it's B.
Got a lot of negative things, like no line.
Right. So I would lean more B, because usually A always has a bit of its tells. Like each A folio has a tell, apart from maybe 1. Some B folios don't have a tell, so they're just kind of, well, it's not A, so it's B. So since we don't have anything that points to A, we would be
Scribe 3 is an artist. Scribe 3 is your artist. This is what no, I'm serious. This is telling me, all of this evidence is telling me that the scribes illustrated their own pages, that each scribe was responsible not only for writing the page, but for drawing the pictures. That's what I think you've established here, which is incredibly important. That's what this says to me, these exceptions. Instead of fighting against the exception, you need to embrace it, right?
Yeah, that's great to hear your
the implication to me is that the scribes and artists are the same person, which is a question I've always wanted to see answered.
I'm not sure.
I would not say 100% that that's totally what's happening, but I'm gonna look further. But that's my instinct.
So here we have something else that's weird going on text-wise.
So we can't put a language on that.
No.
But what is weird is that all 3 words, if there are 3, end with the EVA M character,
which is relatively rare.
It's
so for us, this plant is relatively unmarked, so we don't really see any strong things here in the imagery. One thing, and that has become clearer to us since after recording the previous video with our 4 participants, is that usually when you get a flat-topped root like this, it's in A, and they will have a stem root line. But here we get a flat-top root because it's the actual root that has a flat top, and no stem root line. So that's like I don't know if I want to be A or B or something in between or something else entirely, which is, again, very interesting to find exactly on this page. And this is the first. So here we do have some text. This is 65V. This would be B language and still scribe 3. So if I understand correctly, we have the same scribe who switches languages when he starts writing with plant.
That seems to have a stem root line, but
yeah, that's a double stem root line even. Here we have kind of a unique plant. We can't really say that this is a typical A flower, although...
And it's scribe 3.
Right, but that's a double stem root line. Maybe copy the stem root line from somewhere else, I don't know. But
scribe 3's drawing their own plants.
Then moving on to 66R, what's going on here? Now here, this might be the only one where I did not notice anything really conflicting, because you told me this is language B and Lisa scribe 5. So that would be perfectly normal.
The only thing is that page, the other page on this side of the bifolio is the circular diagram.
Right. So if you had the loose sheet, you would see the circular diagram and then this next to it.
On the left and this on the right, yes. Which are two different languages, but they both use this funny character, which is called the picnic table.
Right. Oh, this one.
There's one right in the middle.
This one?
Yeah, this one, yes. Yeah.
So,
which also typically only appears in one of the languages. I think it's B. But say 57V would be the only exception where it also occurs. The thing is, if you take the two, if you had this sheet by itself, then certainly the left-hand part and the right-hand part were not done by the same person there. So they have a different thing to show. One is more, say, cosmological, and this is just text, and it has a little person near the bottom, and then they're different hands. So it just shows again this is a mix-up of many different contributions.
So this would have been one view, basically. So then finally we have this page, which this is kind of the companion of this first page we saw, where we had the two different paragraphs. So one paragraph A-like, one paragraph B-like. Here it's all B, right?
Yes.
And that's scribe 5, so that makes sense. But here again, we got a plant with more A properties. And finally, the last one.
We've got the typical calyx, haven't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
Typical calyx, also layered petals. And even structure-wise, we get 3 different leaf clusters. So this one is again very clearly A. Wait, which scribe is this?
5.
5. Oh, so that's interesting because well, you guys can say what's going on here.
So it's this. So this is
these
are the two points. 57R and 66B are the same side of the bifolium. Both by scribe 5.
So
and more A features.
There's some A features, definitely.
This is again screaming A. I think there might be a very faint stem root line. There's an A flower, A calyx, and A structure, because we get this clump of leaves. That's so typical for A. So again,
the distinction that I think you need to make is between style and artist,
right?
Because those are different things, right? So this could be an A style,
right?
But scribe 5 as the artist, which is why it is incongruous to find that plant in what's definitely a B page, because this is scribe 5. This isn't scribe 1. This is scribe 5. So scribe 5 writes in B dialect. We know that this is a B page, clearly a B page. And so again, that just to me is more evidence that what we're seeing here is that the scribes are in fact illustrating the pages that they've written.
But then it would also mean that scribe 5 had access to the same source as scribe 1.
Sure, if they're all writing, I mean, they're all in a workshop working together.
But that's a different, that would be a different source than the one that the bee plant scribes are using.
Well, but they're all working together, you know. I mean, they're all working together, they're seeing each other's work, they're all sitting around a workshop somewhere, passing things around, looking at each other's work, looking at some, a model that they're trying to copy and influencing each other. It's a workshop. It's a workshop environment. It makes total sense to me.
Yeah, but I mean, for people who try to find like, okay, which sources were they using? This might be interesting because that would mean that there was a source prompting these leaves, these flowers to both scribes. And that source was not used by the scribes, by the ones who used. Well,
the implication, though, you're assuming that the scribes are, number one, copying their sources faithfully, which we don't know. They could be making up these plants for all we know. We don't know that there is a source. They could be drawing them from life. They could have an herb garden that they're sketching from. I mean, we can't assume that there is an herbal that they're copying from. We really cannot assume that. And in fact, I would say we shouldn't assume that based on these results. This is what the evidence is saying. And I know people very much want there to be a source manuscript, but there doesn't have to be.
No, I don't think there will be a single source manuscript. We would have known about that, but everyone uses source.
Well, if it survived, 90%, 98% of all manuscripts written in the Middle Ages don't survive today. So
so I think this kind of thing where you get 2 lions as the root, or 2, well, no, whatever these animals are, these are not lions, but so you won't find this in your garden, but you will find it in sources.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think in all of this, you have to listen to the evidence, right? And the evidence that you've presented tells me pretty clearly that what we're talking about is scribes, drawing their own pictures. Yeah. That's really what this feels like to me. That's actually it's really interesting.
And more than one scribe can write in a same dialect. We can see that, right?
Right, we know that. We've got 4 scribes writing in dialect B and 1 scribe writing dialect A.
And so more than one scribe then could also draw in a similar style, whether that's because they're influenced by their partner who they're drawing with, or many other reasons.
So then scribe 5 was sitting in between scribe 1 and scribe 2 at the scriptorium.
Right, he's copying. He keeps peeking over and they keep saying, stop looking at my work.
Copying plans from one guy and copying text.
Don't stop copying me.
I think something that would be very convincing to me would be if you found greater variation in the B plants as opposed to the A plants. That is to say, if you found B plants were more variable, they still had B characteristics, but there was more variation, then that would be an argument for it being multiple artists.
Right. There is. But I'm not sure if it overlaps with scribes. We haven't looked.
Right. So I think that's the next thing you have to do is layer my scribal assignments are my own. It's my opinion. I could be completely wrong. I feel really confident about my work based on, my expertise and my experience in working with medieval manuscripts. But so I think it would be really valuable to me as a confirmation or a interrogation of my work to see how my scribal assignments layer on top of what the work that you've done. I think that would actually be really valuable, and it wouldn't be very difficult. You just need to add another column and input what the scribal assignations are.
There are some B pages like this one, for example, that don't really have any of these features that we talked about. And it's even
which leaf is that?
That's 41V.
Okay, so let me pull up. Here's my table. All right, so we're looking at 41 verso, is that right? Okay, hold on. So 41 verso, that would be, that's scribe 5. So is folio,
Very
and if a
interesting.
join is 48, and that's also scribe 5.
That would mean that scribe 5 doesn't play along with B properties much.
Doing his own thing.
Because 48, that's this one. You get a bit of daisy.
It's incomplete, so it's hard to tell.
Yeah, you get a bit of daisy, but it's you see it's not a typical B.
Right. So again, if all of your weirdos align with scribe 5, that
a lot of them do, yeah.
That's really strong evidence that scribe 5, those pages are different artists. And if you have a really strong alignment between scribe and artist, then that tells you that the scribe is probably the artist,
right.
as opposed to each scribe having their own pet artist, which would be weird.
And this makes it even more complicated, but these roots are among the very few roots that appear again in the small plants section with great certainty. Small plants only scribe 1 and A dialect, right? So this would again mean that scribe 5 is kind of an in-between figure between A and B, between these other scribes, because his roots are the only B roots that are also included in the small plants section.
And what about 48 verso? Is that also?
Also, yes. So these two.
Yeah, okay.
And what about the other?
The evidence
roots?
speaks for itself, man.
Well, I don't know about that.
Well, we weren't going to go there with any theories, but we've kind of started.
Well, I mean, started. You know what this is really strong evidence to me that the scribes are also the artists. I think that's extremely cool.
Now, when Lisa saw our work, she was very excited because she, I think, rightfully saw at least some corroboration of her work on the scribal hands. And I'm not sure if we can say that the scribes are always the artists, which is what she seems to think is most likely at the moment, even though she also said we still have to look more into that. But I do see it as some corroboration, because in these places where she points out an unusual hand, we also see unusual things happening with our matching of plant properties to the language. Do you think that's a correct way of looking at it?
Yeah, I think so. I must say I haven't really looked at that in detail. I mean, we already have Lisa, who has all this in her fingertips, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely.
I did note that those bifolios where things aren't as they should be, so where you have unclear identifications or even conflicting identifications, these are typically B language folios in where the B language is quite weak. Yeah, they're actually fall into the category of the intermediate language, which I call C. There are also A language folios that have the wrong point on it, so to speak. But these are all at the end of the herbal section. So just before Quire 8, whatever it means.
So there's also when we are looking at our weird folios that we have a hard time classifying, are they more A, more B? I've said this a couple of times before, it's not like we're just looking at a mathematical formula. I mean, we're looking at more than 100 different drawings of unique plants. I already find it quite bizarre that we can classify them to this extent using basically binary properties, like has stem root line, does not have stem root line. There will always be some kind of in-between situations, which I find okay. But so what we talked about is that more than statistically expected of those, I think we can say that already with some certainty, fall within what you call the C language, like the in-between language, right? So that does seem to kind of corroborate both of our observations that there are two groups of plants with kind of an intermediate section, which is what we say, and you say, well, there are also two languages with an intermediate section, more or less, or at least a group of B folios that are not as much B as the others, and that can be seen as kind of in between. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just a general remark then on the topic of the hands. I mean, I think everybody tends to agree that the plants were drawn first, and then the text was added later.
Yeah.
Now, if we can also agree there were 5 scribes, but we can question whether all 5 scribes were able to draw. So maybe the drawings were made just by 2, and the text was added by, okay, in the herbal, mainly 3 to 4, for example. Yeah. So, and then say, having that in mind, so if 2 persons made the drawings and then 3 or 4 added the text later, then maybe it all can be fit in together somehow in a system.
Yeah, right.
But that's again something for Lisa then to check.
Yeah, like sometimes I do really feel like we're still early days in all of this research, because, for example, on the forum, I think you may have seen this post by Bernd, who said that what we call the A calyx, the typical A calyx, for example, here, is really what you would expect botanically from certain types of flowers. So there's a whole class of flowers. I don't know enough about botany to actually say something decent about that, but so there's a whole class of flowers that split into 5 petals. So these are called petals, and these are called petals. So when you have 5 petals, the colorful leaves of the flower, you will also get 5 tepals. And usually when you look at a flower from the side, which has 5 of something, you'll see 3 of them.
Yeah.
So that would mean that this is actually quite an accurate botanical representation. And if we only see these in A, there is at least part of the split is botanical, but yeah. For example, all plants in nature have veins. So whether you draw those veins or not is a stylistic choice.
I would say so, yeah.
But then
you want to make it look better, or you have more time, then you add them. Yeah.
Yes. And the same goes probably for the stem root lines, kind of like, oh, I'll put a line there. It's a bit of a detail. Also, for example, that it's also only A that this stem will continue into the center of the leaf. That could be botanical in some ways, but not entirely. So it's more attention to detail, I guess, in some way. But then this type of calyx would not be about detail, but would be about some botanical preference for a certain type of flower. At least part of it is definitely stylistic. So basically what I'm trying to say is, if someone would want to argue that we're looking at 2 different artists, I would definitely not argue against that. That's definitely a possibility.
Sure.
But I do not think that Scribe 5 drew their own plants, because we see such strong A properties here. So to bring it back to the topic of today's video, I think that we find all of that kind of coinciding in Quire 8 really shows how bizarre this Quire is.
Yes, sure.
Okay, I think that's a lot already to take in for this video for our viewers. So thank you, Rene, for having this talk with us today.
Sure. Well, thank you. And just to repeat that, I think what you have done together with Currier is really interesting. And I didn't expect, after all these years, that something like this would come up.